Good afternoon. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Solari-Twadell. I'm faculty at Loyola University School of Nursing, and I'm Vice President of Faith Community Nursing International, and I'm very pleased to be with you this afternoon. So as I begin to talk about what is occurring in our churches, I'd just like to frame it by discussing the terms that I'm going to use. So when I speak of church, to me, church is the health place in the community. And when I speak of health, I'm including that health is more than the absence of disease, and that we look at health from a whole person perspective. And it was really looking at the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the social aspects that contribute to well-being. And that the purpose of health is really to be in the best place to serve others. And when I speak of a nurse, I'm speaking broader than the nurse that you would typically see in the doctor's office and a medical setting that's doing treatments and doing vital signs. But I'm really speaking to the nurse as a professional that's educated and experienced in prevention and fostering healthy decision-making that will ultimately support individual and community well-being. So when we talk about faith community nursing, we're talking about a health promotion, disease prevention nursing role, where the nurse works as part of the staff of a local faith community, congregation, parish, and that position is paid as many other staff positions are, and that this position is focused on health promotion and disease prevention, and has a focus on spiritual care. So during the COVID epidemic, faith community nurses have been very creative in the way in which they have continued to reach out to members of the parish who are isolated, and that number of people that are isolated has multiplied in this situation. So the other thing I would like to mention is that I've recently authored a text called Faith Community Nursing, a Specialty Practice, that focuses on changing the understanding of health, and I've co-edited that with Dr. Deborah Zebarth. And if you would like more information on faith community nursing, that certainly is a resource that you can reach out to. So when we talk about what's happening right now with COVID, it is an opportunity for the church to really reach out and present its relevancy to its members, and be prepared for what might come next. So, as a society, we were all taken back in March of 2020 when all of a sudden we were told that we had to stay home. So we've been lulled into thinking that, this would never happen to us with our sophisticated medical system. And so thus, we found ourselves with a lack of supplies to protect people, a lack of testing to identify those people that were carriers or those that were infectious. We had no vaccine, and at the ultimate end of the spectrum, we had a lack of hospital beds. So the significance of a reservation system for people returning to church really can take on the perspective of contact tracing. So this isn't just an exercise to allocate where people are going to be sitting in church. It is an opportunity to identify who's sitting where, and if an individual has COVID following a service, that those that have been seated around that individual could be notified and begin to quarantine themselves, so that they would self-quarantine for 14 days to make sure that they weren't in a position of spreading the virus even further. So that relates to each member taking on the responsibility of supporting communal health. But when you look at the role of the church in health, we're looking at that piece of using the scripture, the beliefs, and the values to help people make better decisions on a daily basis, so that they, again, are putting themselves in the best position to be in service to others. And at this time, that becomes a very valuable contribution of the church, to have people that are in a position that are well, that can reach out and stay connected with those that are more vulnerable, that are immunosuppressed. So when we look to the future, what role could the church play to be better prepared. So why wouldn't the church be in contact with the local health department to be part of the solution to the problem? So would it be strange that if in fact the parish had large meeting rooms, that one of those meeting rooms could be dedicated to be a COVID testing center? That would be a very nice contribution to the community. It would be an opportunity for the church to showcase its relevancy to the community and to support its interest in the well-being of the community. So one way that a church can ensure that it will be ready for the future is to develop a health cabinet or a health committee, and that would be a variety of interdisciplinary health folks and other folks that are interested in planning, so that when there would be a future resurgence, that the church would be prepared and that they would be part of the plan of the community at large and not be working in isolation. So it would truly live out that profile and mission of the church being a health place in the community, and showcase how it is in a position of protecting vulnerable populations. Mm-hmm. I think the principle that undergirds this is the principle of stewardship. And with that, we talk about personal stewardship. So I have been given the gift of health, and as a steward of that gift, I to take responsibility on a daily basis to be making good decisions, so that when I'm called upon to serve and carry out God's will, that I'm in the best position to do so. So that's really the personal responsibility of stewardship. But if we look at it from a communal perspective, that through the preaching, the teaching, and the service provided to the faith community, that the message comes through that we as a faith community want to respect all individuals in our church, and to be able to take the protective steps, so that yes, I'm protecting myself, but I'm also protecting the other members of my faith community. And therefore, I'm being a good steward of my own health resources, but I'm also reaching out and following guidelines so that I am a good steward in supporting the communal perspective and well-being of the faith community. So what's really important is for churches to prepare their people, to help them gain a new mindset of how faith and health are connected, and to live that mission out in the life of their church, and to provide that through the ministries that they offer to their faith community. So if that's something that your church is interested in bringing alive in a more concrete way, I would encourage you to consider the employment of a faith community nurse. Thank you very much.
Delivery methods. I get this question all the time, and I've had churches look at this picture and go, ooh, that's something we'd like to do. This is not something you want to do. This is crazy, and yet it's happening all over the world, and it's happening, unfortunately, all over the USA. The EPA's words are better than mine, so all I had to do was put them on a slide. Can you do this? The answer is no, and CDC's got very similar words. Wide area fogging is not what they want to see. They want to see directed application. And directed application for large spaces is what's critical. So when we're dealing with large spaces, a gymnasium, a large worship space, we've got to figure out how to balance speed and scale of delivery of the disinfectant with wet contact time, because that fundamentally we have to have that 10-minute wet contact time on pre-cleaned surfaces. So we generally teach this 4 methods of application for large spaces that are productive. One is foaming, another one is ultra low volume fogging. There's a limited applicability for electrostatic, which is the really sexy spray you can see online everywhere on YouTube, where it literally wraps the cleaner around a surface, but that only works if you can electrically charge the surface, which is awfully hard to do on carpet and composite and wood and a whole bunch of other things. But the other method is airless spray. We actually learned from some of the faith-based groups that do disaster recovery how you could take an airless paint sprayer, a standard airless paint sprayer, and change the settings in the tip and create something you could use to disinfect very large areas very quickly. And it gives you the best balance of big wet droplets driven at a little bit of pressure that are going to wet the surface without bouncing off, and allow you to move very quickly, including with multiple applicators. So I'll show you a couple of examples. This is what happens when your, whoops, airless spray is not calibrated properly. See if I can get that to go. Come on. Oh, it's very entertaining. It's a shame it's not. There we go. This is what you don't want to do. This works. It gets everything wet for a full 10 minutes, but it's also got a fair amount of collateral damage potential. And it's going inside of places like ductwork where EPA forbids the use of disinfectants. And by the way, there's no reason to be concerned about your ductwork transmitting COVID. There's no evidence that that is even remotely a possibility. Whereas you compare with this is what a calibrated airless sprayer with any disinfectant should look like. You're going to get your full 10-minute wet contact time. It's going to be efficient. It's going to be low mess. It's going to be accurate. It's going to be thorough. This is the kind of thing you want to be able to do. And then to go from a vertical surface to a horizontal surface with the same piece of equipment, the same applicator, the same settings, the same product, everything. And I don't know why it didn't spray on the floor, but I think you can imagine what spraying on the floor looks like. Okay, last section I wanted to hit on was guidelines, specifications, and right expectations. So there are no protocols right now. There is no licensing. Any contractor can provide this service. Anybody can get into this, which is a very mixed blessing, to be kind. And there's no licensing for using the disinfectants in this, whereas there is in some other trades that are or are not in certain states and jurisdictions regulated. One thing we do know for sure is that every building has someone who's accountable or responsible for it. And that person is staring down the barrel of all this guidance coming from OSHA and CDC and associations and states, which says nothing. A whole lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. Disinfect, disinfect, disinfect. So it's incumbent upon us to figure out how to translate that word disinfect into real protection for guests and visitors and staff and participants and parishioners, etc. And there's no standard to follow. So if we had to boil it down to one standard, we are working on something more sophisticated, but the basics are this for disinfection. If it's visibly dirty, clean it. Do not try and disinfect a dirty surface. Ensure you're going to get your wet contact time. And if you want to do things like you have a very dusty environment and you want to do a pull down and mist the air and then clean everything off the floor after it's gotten heavy from the droplets and you can clean the floor, that's fine. Those are great techniques and we can teach how to do those. Always pay the vast majority of your attention to your touch points, your doorknobs, your toilet handles, your faucets, all of those sorts of things are the primary transmission vector at all times. Follow some basics that we've taught for years, like clean from the farthest point back toward the exit. And when you're working with a liquid treatment, work from high to low. All of these things address gravity, help cross-contamination, and avoid duplication of effort. We do have a master format specification for coronavirus mitigation that I'm almost done with. I'm going to be very excited to show that, share that with people when it is done. And the last question I wanted to hit on was, we get this question all the time. It's the second most asked question we get. The first most asked question is, are you EPA approved? And we have to teach them list N. The second thing is, how long does it last? I think the greatest thing I can leave you guys with as a takeaway, because there's so much misinformation on the internet, is to hear me loud and clear as an industry expert. There are no preventative chemical treatments that last. None. We can do mold because we make more mold resistant coating than anybody. We understand that. We can keep mold from coming back for years. There are hospital paints we know that can keep bacteria down for weeks, months. There are some treatments for things like your tent or your tarp that you're going to store in the basement that can keep bacteria down for weeks or months. There is no viral equivalent. There is no virustatic product. Don't get trapped in mumbo jumbo and voodoo. Regular cleaning and disinfecting is the only answer, and then intensifying regular cleaning and disinfecting when people are ill or suspected to be ill is the next step. And addressing your touch points, making sure you have a strategy and a plan for your hotspots is critical. All of the other things we can talk about in great detail. But bottom line is you cannot promise disinfectant will have any kind of performance lifespan beyond the moment at which it was used and applied. And I was aware of the very short time window, so I've tried to put 5 pounds into a 3-pound bag. So I hope that was provocative for discussion, and I really value the opportunity to present.
Appreciate it, Sean.
Thank you, Cole. Hey, Cole, I have a quick question for you that's come up in conversations we've had.
So, and maybe you've heard this also, what is the impact on the actual materials in, say, a church? For instance, pews in a church or wood chairs, etc., when you do the disinfectant?
So we have a technical bulletin we're revising right now on surface compatibility. I think it is worth asking any disinfectant manufacturer to provide something like that. We are also doing a lot of testing with Wolf Gordon and some other folks on some high value textiles that are fairly common, and also on some wool carpet and commercial furniture. The manufacturer should be able to provide you with a sample so that you can do some spot testing. I'm doing some spot testing in my church this weekend. We've got wood pews that I think are pretty darn durable in our 1902 church, but until you actually give it a shot, you just don't know. Most churches do not have excellent record keeping in terms of where they bought their furnishings and what they're made out of. So it is tested in an inconspicuous area, but that's also important because the testing also gives you a chance to determine, well, how much empowerment can we do? I mean, if we do spray bottles, if we make wipes in a tub, if we make wipes of our own in a 5-gallon bucket, if we're going to use the airless sprayer, how much of this could be done by those ushers that rebelled versus, I mean, how much do we need an outside service provider for? What is our plan? So I'm working on that with my church, working on, okay, if we get to this point, are we going to need a service provider and who are we going to pre-qualify versus we're really trying to do an awful lot of it ourselves. Look at pH. pH is a big deal, but recognize that pH, the closer you are to 7, the closer you are to distilled water. And then it's a logarithmic exponential jump. Each step you get away from 7, down towards 1 and up towards 13. The biggest jumps are way out at the extremes. So a pH of 9 or 10 is not that big of a deal. Even 11 is not really considered corrosive. Corrosive is 12 and higher. But there are neutral disinfectants which are less likely to harm things, but they don't clean. That's the trade-off. They just don't clean. So you might have to have a separate cleaner, and now you're trying to tell people use this for this and use this for that.
Now, are these products you're suggesting, these disinfectants? This is something that would be used on a daily basis, or after major gatherings, or after a corona incident?
After the latter two, after major gatherings and after a corona incident.
Okay.
Or expected corona incident. These are safe enough to use every day. There's no reason you couldn't use them every day. But really, they're usually used in terms of a regular cycle. So, for example, what we've discussed, and we're not reopening until probably August, is that Sunday service, and then there's absolutely no reason for us to do anything until Tuesday. So why? Why do we have to clean right away? There's actually no reason. Viruses are very fragile. Even though we have data that shows they can live and be infectious for 2.5 weeks, that's above and beyond. There's another study that says 9 days that's reputable, and then the National Institutes of Health says 3 days. We feel that we can let things lie fallow and let a vast amount of the infectious virus deteriorate of its own accord, and then clean a couple days after Sunday services. But that may not be doable for everybody whose churches have more community activity than ours.
Are these products, these disinfectants you're mentioning, are they expensive? Are there huge cost implications to using these things, or they're just simply?
I mean, ready-to-use products are more expensive than concentrated products, but then again, there's trade-offs in terms of mixing and labor and errors and all that sort of thing. Because if you use a concentrate the wrong way, it's a real mess. And people fail to appreciate that. And also, you get people exposed while they're mixing it. So, yeah, ready-to-use is really what everybody wants. There are some really extraordinarily cheap disinfectants. I'll give you an example. Someone approached us recently and said, we were going to use your product, but we want you to address this other product. It says, well, gallon makes 4 gallons, and therefore it's cheaper than ours. And I read the label, and I said, well, that's not actually true. If you're using it only for mold, then a gallon makes 4 gallons. But it says to use it straight if it's for viruses. And they said, oh, so it's not cheaper. And the answer is no. Label is the law. How to read a label and interpret a label can be difficult. We're really good at it, and we're a lot faster than Google, Sean and I. So if there's a product you're interested in, you want to compare it to ours, then we're happy to do it. To answer your cost question up, these are nationally available. These are products are easy to find. They're about $25 to $30 a gallon for the Shockwave ready to use, and I think the Decon 30 is a little more expensive than that. So they're on the premium side, but they're being used the right way. I mean, this is what a specialty tool is for. So that goes back to the comment about, would you use these every day? Probably not. But for that so-called deep clean, which is a term I hate.
What about off-the-shelf products? I mean, I have a question here regarding people using Clorox wipes, for example, or vinegar and water, for example.
Well, vinegar and water you can't speak for, because vinegar and water has no data, no registered label, nothing backing it up. I mean, we all know that vinegar works on microorganisms that are acid sensitive. We don't know that about COVID yet. We have no idea. The fact of the matter is most disinfectants are alkaline, not acid. But off the shelf, I mean, Clorox wipes Clorox wipes are quaternary ammonium chloride. They're the same type of chemistry we have. Okay. So we have a more dynamic label with more label claims on it and a better cleaning system in the product, but the quat is an active ingredient. Their quat is a 3rd generation and ours is a 4th. So if you want to get really into the weeds, I can explain to you the difference. Sure. But there's a lot of off-the-shelf products that are fine. They typically are hard non-porous surfaces only, though. You rarely see those that have the ability to transition from a porous surface to a non-porous surface. So let's say you had a childcare area that was carpeted, and you're going to move from there to a hallway that is vinyl composition tile. When the product's registered for both surface types, you don't even have to stop moving.
Right. Okay. We have another speaker who's scheduled to be with us at 3:15. So I don't believe he's with us yet. But I thought we'd open up the panel to questions from the audience or from one another or comments of what was said earlier. I'll just open it up to anyone. I have let's see what I have. Any questions here are pertinent. There was mention of a TED Talk. Who was that you, Cole, that mentioned a TED Talk or something?
I've been giving this tech talk.
Tech Talk. Tech. They thought it was a TED Talk.
I've had a lot of people say TED Talk, and I'd like to think of it that way because it is technology and design, and it's not just tech. It's contextual, but no, it's.
Do you have these shared on YouTube at all?
Actually, it's all in the Masterworks community that I showed earlier. I'll put that back up.
And I'll share that with the attendees as well. All the links, by the way, for everyone who's listening, along with the survey and the reoccupancy plans, will be shared with anyone that requested at the end of the seminar. If you go to JNKA-architects.com, you can find us under the About Us. There's a newsletter link there. If you request the documents, we can send them there. Or you can contact me directly at jmanfredy@jnka-architects.com. And I'll be happy to bundle everything together and send it to you via email if you don't want to do it via the website. So feel free to contact us and we'll get you the information that we've shared today. So, let me see.
So, John, one thing I thought about asking or commenting on, Scott, you asked the question, how do we think this might change how churches are designed in the future moving forward and how church buildings and related facilities are impacted? And the speaker that hopefully he can join us in a couple minutes, I spoke with Father Tom, who's from a Catholic church in Bloomington, next door to IU, Indiana University. He actually summarized it that there's 3 types of members of a church community, right? Those that are very devout and attend all the services and really are very involved in a lot of different groups of the church, then those that are semi involved that come occasionally, and then those that are rarely involved. He sees the impact that the devout are staying in tune. They're watching online services. They're being proactive, so they're solid. But the semi-active people are drifting off a little bit and not participating, not watching the online services very often, if at all. And then the people that rarely come or came, usually just for Christmas and Easter, those are lost, or he's sensing that they're going to be lost even more. So I just thought it was an interesting way to break it down. So it'll be interesting to see, is that what happens across the world in terms of participation and membership in churches and living your faith, but it just, it's just something that to reflect on a little bit. The negative impact of this is it's pushing people that are on the fringes maybe further away, and how can we bring them back, or how can we be better at evangelizing, or as Ann said, becoming, leaders in this effort as church groups and church members. I mean, when our first talk a month ago with the Diocesan group, we kind of saw this as an opportunity for evangelization, that churches can show, hey, we can handle this, and we can turn this into a positive, to show that as communities we can be proactive and creative, and to a point that people are comfortable to come back if we can show that, improve that. But it is a loaded subject, so I'm just putting that out there. But I thought it was interesting that your question reminded me of what Father Tom said from Bloomington.
Well, and if I could,
I did join, David.
Oh, hi, Father Tom.
Good.
Hello.
Good.
I don't know if I
Hope
have.
it's okay. I use your quote, Father Tom.
I don't know if I have any video yet. Are you seeing me at all?
Not yet.
We don't see you yet.
I still see Cole's screen, John.
Sorry, guys. Stop showing screen now. I wasn't paying
Oh.
attention. There
Okay,
you go.
that's okay.
It should be visible now.
You know what? I can, if I turn off my webcam, let's see if Father Tom can join us.
Here, I'll turn off mine. There we go.
You want to try that again, Father Tom? And for those in the audience,
I did dial in, but usually I see my picture up there, but now I'm not seeing it. So it's probably something I'm not doing.
And for those in the audience, this is Father Tom Kovatch from the St. Charles Borromeo Church in Bloomington, Indiana.
So do I need to do something with one of these little things over here?
There should be an icon below the green speaker that looks like a little video camera.
Yeah, there it is.
If you click on that, it should launch your.
There you go.
Yeah.
We see you.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry that I'm late.
No worries.
The host, I had to make Father Tom the presenter, and I think that's what did it. So my bad.
Not a big deal. Thanks for joining us.
So let me know if you're ready for me. If not, I'll just listen along with the group.
Well, I think that was a good segue, Father Tom. I just shared your quote about the three types of people: the devout, the semi-devout, and those that were Christmas and Easter attendees.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go get them now. So anytime I see the challenges, I think that we can take two approaches. One, we do nothing and just hope that they come, which has kind of been the case for probably churches forever. But now we have to go out. We got to go out and get them. So I think the positives from the COVID is, the negatives are that we shut the doors and we told people they couldn't come. And whenever you do that, then they listen to you and they don't come. And then some of them don't come back. So we are going to do a development program, and we're going to start next week. Probably should have started before now, but we're going to call all of our parishioners. There's about 1,000 families. So we're going to break that into groups, and then my staff is going to be assigned a certain number of parishioners, families to call. So like my new youth minister is coming on Monday. He'll be assigned to any family that has teenagers. there's a lot of them, so he won't do it all by himself. But it's just going to be basically like sales. When I was in sales, we had a number of accounts and we called them on a regular basis. So probably what we'll do to begin with is to call them and ask them if they know about the live streams. I got online really quick, and I'm not the youngest of guys. I can dabble in things, but I'm more dangerous than I am really good at computers. So I quickly got a tripod and my iPhone, and I was live streaming on Facebook the day after we closed. And there's a lady in our parish that is a writer for various news agencies, and she did a story on it, and it went throughout the country from, I think it was Catholic News Services. And she basically showed, what I did, setting up the tripod and everything I did to set up the shoot. Now we've elevated a little bit. We have a camcorder, so that took me a little bit of time to get up to speed. But I'm going the next step. So now this live streaming is something that I think is very important. So for me, this is my third parish. My first parish is watching my live streams. So is my last parish and my current parish. I have a mission in Uganda. They are watching every week. And my family members. I have five siblings, 2 sisters and 3 brothers, and they're all joining. So the positive for me is all these people that I couldn't get together in my church at one time are actually joining me.
Yeah.
For Easter, some of the families that were split, kids in college, they decided that they would watch the Easter Mass together. So one family I know of, the son goes to DePaul in Chicago, and they were here, so they watched the live stream together. I'm on YouTube, and then I also put it on Facebook. I think there's a lot of positives that could come out of this. I really do. So my engineer that built my radio station, we have a radio station down here as well that we really haven't utilized other than we take a relevant radio feed. And he's going to come down here, and I've got a system that's not that expensive. It's about $5,000, and it's got 2 zoom cameras that can rotate. And my kids will be involved with running that. So I'll pre-position. I think you can do 20, 30, 40, 50 pre-positioned settings. And then all they do is throughout the Mass, they just hit the number, and the cameras move as they should to the ambo where the person's reading the reading, or to the altar. So we're heading that way. We're not going to cry about what was done. I don't question the bishops or the leaders of our communities, and we're moving forward with it. We're going to catechize more through it, and I think the audience is bigger. So yesterday for my daily Mass, I goofed, so I thought that maybe there was actually 170 people that were watching a Mass that usually get about 40 or 50. But then I found out that my audio was goofed up. So I think people are going back trying to see is it working? I had the wrong mic setting. So
you can fix that on YouTube. Just do a voiceover.
on YouTube.
Do a YouTube voiceover on your own video.
Yeah.
Well, Father Tom, have you thought of possibly doing some education programs and offering them via Zoom?
Yeah, that's going to be part of it too. Yes. Yep. That's why I think the opportunities are greater, because we can reach far more people to these live streams than we could by bringing them to the parish. Yeah.
Father Kenny and Scott, are you all doing something similar at your parishes in terms of recording Mass and sharing it online?
Yes, I've been live streaming every day pretty much since mid to late March. And we don't have a very large community here, so my weekday masses might have, 15 to 20 views. Certainly now that people are able to come in person, the number of views is down a little bit.
Sure.
But we're also working on, we had a couple of religious education, like middle school religious education Zoom meetings. And we were pondering what to do about Vacation Bible School. They're actually going to have small gatherings, careful gatherings at catechists' homes for those who are comfortable with doing that. But we're not hosting anything at the parish for that.
Pastor Scott, you all doing recordings as well?
I just want more of Father Tom's spirit. This is an opportunity, so true. We move forward on two fronts. So our Sunday morning services are actually filmed on Thursday nights, and pretty highly post-production. So it comes across probably as about a 45 to 50-minute program, for lack of a better word. Text over video, cuts and edits, things like that. They can make me sound really good. I don't know how it can happen in real life, but now since last week when we reopened in person, over the next couple of months, we're actually upgrading some equipment. Father Tom, I know what you mean. There's all kinds of things out there. People younger and smarter than I am are trying to figuring that out.
Yeah.
We're gonna try and blend that. We had been live casting our services to not very many, 40 or 50 families might be watching that any given weekend. We're going to now be able to do, we hope, live in the service, switching from cameras, text over video, to try and do as much as we can in a live setting that would provide a really good online experience. It's just very different. Father Tom, you're right. It's different. It's not going back, and no sense complaining about that. It's a chance to seize the opportunity. We're doing that, and the Lord is not sitting in heaven saying, "Gee, I didn't see this one coming."
Yeah.
And so as his followers, we have the opportunity, right? The Great Commission is go out, right? Not wait for them to come to you.
Exactly.
So if this gets us off our blessed assurance and gets us out into the community, that's a win. And so we're trying to address it both in-person gatherings, which Dave Kuhlman, you and I have talked a little bit about, probably going to be smaller for a while, maybe for a long while. But online, then how do you make that a viable engagement? So we're actually assigning one of our pastors to be our online pastor, and so he will be there. He will be interacting through the chat feature. We're giving people the opportunity to fill out guest cards online. Now that's all digital, no more paper cards. The thing we actually did on Good Friday was, and this I know will be a theological issue for some, but we actually had folks, we redid a sort of a Paschal supper and had folks take communion in their home. We are doing that in the congregation when we gather together, but we can't do that obviously all the time. For those online, we're working through how do you do that. I think you saw the Tribune article, Chicago Tribune article, we baptized on Easter Sunday. That was a challenge for sure. I think going forward, that could be tough. How are you going to do that? For us, baptism takes place typically during worship service, so it's something the congregation celebrates together. So there's a lot of pretty fundamental things about the Christian faith. We're trying to work through what is, appropriate in alignment with our faith, but what is the opportunity to bring the good news, to evangelize during a pretty challenging season. One thing's for sure, the church has the answers. We've had 2,000 years. Those things haven't changed. It's just a matter of translating them into a culture that's kind of buffeted right now by a lot of different challenges.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe the reopening plans that we're talking about include what you're going to be doing in all these innovative ways, these online live streaming interactions. And
instead of a strict interpretation, reopening, here's our spacing, here's our occupancy, here's our, no, more than that.
It's holistic.
Yeah, it's holistic, and that's
yeah.
very exciting.
Well, how do you, by the way, I sent that to John Manfredi, so he should have that. You know, how do you provide spiritual care? I love that, Anne, your approach to that, the spiritual care, which is pastor, right? You're a caregiver. How do you provide spiritual care and feeding to some of your folks in our congregation? 40% or so responded to a survey saying they're not ready to come back yet. Well, Ezekiel 34 forbids you from just forgetting them. You've got to go after the wounded and the strayed, and you've got to bind up the wounded and bring them back. That's what it means to be a shepherd. So we don't have answers for all of that yet, but we are certainly trying to listen to folks who are trying to join us on that same journey. So.
Yeah, I think there's been some pretty creative things that faith community nurses have done. You know, some of them have prayer shawl ministries, and they know they can't go into somebody's home, but they certainly can leave a prayer shawl on somebody's porch and let them know that it's from the congregation and that they can key into the congregation in these ways. So I think that, you know, in this at this time, it's really important that when you reach out, that you're reaching out in a relevant way that's really going to meet the needs of the people and where they're at. And so, you know, there's a lot of ways that people can be very creative, and particularly addressing those that are isolated, which most people are in this situation. Yeah. But I mean, the immunosuppressed, you know, the vulnerable populations, you know, it used to be that there was maybe X number of shut-ins. Well, now that number is probably tripled or quadrupled. So,
right, that's all it was for online. Yeah.
One of the things we have found, Father Tom, I don't know if you found this too, our volunteer base has been really, really strong. It's as though we've sort of been able to push ministry down to the congregation, and they have owned it wonderfully. That's another very positive thing that's come out of this for us. The base of the triangle of those who own ministry has become much, much wider and more democratic, and that's been a very good thing for us.
Yeah,
that's exciting. That's really great.
Yeah, no, that's because then it makes it, there's, you know, a sense of belonging in the community, you know, and it's, the church is made up of those people, and they are able to still reach out, you know, and carry the word in multiple different ways.
The other thing that I'm looking to do, but I just don't have the antenna yet, I have the FM transmitter. So, you know, those that are old enough to remember the drive-in theaters, if you have an FM transmitter, you can actually transmit into the cars. So my danger group that have been afraid to come back, they could come to a mass, be parked in the parking lot. I would have the altar outside. In the past, they haven't allowed us to do outdoor masses, but now the bishop is allowing that. So I've got my tent and all of that, and I'm going to try to do at least one here in the next couple of weeks. And then if a lot of people come, then I'll have one of my 4 masses each weekend will be an outdoor mass where my people in danger group can drive up, tune in the radio. They could pull up the live stream if they want, but they'd be able to see me, which is what most of them want anyway. And then we would give out Holy Communion at the very end. I'd either go car to car or they would drive past me. So that's the group that I want to make sure that we really touch base with, because they're my most loyal group, and they're the group that a lot of priests are saying, you can't come yet. I have a hard time telling them they can't come.
That's awesome.
And revival at the Catholic Church. What a world. I love it.
I really think that we all have, and it sounds like this has been a really good meeting. I wish I could have been there from the very start to heard everybody, but I see it's being recorded. But I really think that this is exactly what the apostles did. They didn't sit and wait. They went out. Right. And we kind of had it good the last 20 or 30 or 40 plus years, where everybody came to us. And we went and visited them in their homes when they were sick or the hospitals. So I think there's exciting times if we go out there, and I think people will embrace this even more than when they were coming, because we'll be more and more in their lives.
Right,
Amen.
right.
John, are we going to get cut off at some point?
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. We're over our time, but I want to thank everyone involved in the conversation today. And as I mentioned to the audience previously, all the content of the presentation will be shared with everyone. I've got documents coming. I'd like to see that YouTube video you mentioned, Father, and I'd like to share that with the attendees as well. So happy to spread the word and share the information with everyone involved. And again, we'll put it on our website, and you can find it there as well if anyone needs that, or my contact information I shared earlier. But thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate the time.
Yes,
Right.
thank you, everyone. It's great to be with you digitally.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave, for setting it up. Appreciate it.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks again. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.